everyone, welcome back to another tutorial. Thank you for joining me this week. This time, no animals or anything like that. I'm going to paint a beautiful meadow, kind of a sunset. I done one kind of similar before, but I had this lovely request for painting of the meadows with flowers, that kind of thing. I was thinking a nice sunset. I have some beautiful reference photographs, and I was kind of flicking through. I just don't know which one to paint, but I'm just going to pick one. It's a beautiful one of a kind of a sunset with bluebells, kind of pinky flowers all along the front coming in, and kind of the sun off in the distance. So I'm going to try that. There's another one as well. It's kind of more of a daylight type of a one with red flowers and white daisies. So there's a beautiful contrast there. I'm not sure which one to try. I might try the red and the white daisies for a change, because I've done a lot of sunsets in the past couple of weeks. So listen, I want to show you the finished painting of the dog. I know it didn't turn out very, very well. It wasn't as nice as I would hoped, and a lot of the comments were kind of right in saying, you know, when I started putting on that dark grey at the beginning, I just kind of lost control, and it was too dark, and I knew it was too dark, but I just had to kind of keep going because it's a live tutorial. I didn't want to be starting all over again and what have you. So I kind of knew the mistakes I made, so I just wanted to continue on just to show you that, you know, not every single painting turns out perfect, and not every single tutorial turns out perfect. I know there are a lot of people out there who will kind of edit their tutorials and keep editing until they have it just right, but they don't show the mistakes. But I like to show mistakes, and I like to show how I can rectify mistakes as well. So let me show you. This is Bella. I just lightened some of the shade around the eyes. I lightened all of that, and I just kind of highlighted some of the fur around the nose as well. Let me see if I can move my hand right. There we go. I highlighted some of that as well. So I think she looks okay. My daughter looked at the painting and she knew immediately it was Bella, our pet. So that's one thing. That's it. I just kind of kept the rest of it simple. So I didn't make any major changes to this. Just highlighted and I brightened some of the fur. That's all I did. But I think it's not too bad. I think it looks okay for what it is. You know, a nice little pet tutorial of my dog Bella. And I did a bit of work on the eyes as well, you see. I just kind of rounded them a little bit more, and I just added some white to show reflection. That's pretty much all I did. So I'm pretty happy with this as a painting. You know what I mean? It's not perfect, but it's fine. Anyway, moving on to today's subject. A beautiful meadow. I'm not sure whether to do landscape or portrait. I'm thinking portrait. I'm not sure. Let's just see. Let's have a look and see what we're going to do. Don't go anywhere. Okay, here we go. There's the photograph now. I think that's beautiful. I will simplify it a little bit, as in with the hills in the distance, some of these details, I will just simplify some of those, but I'm kind of focusing more on this lovely bed of flowers coming down like this. And what I love about this photograph is the lovely contrast between the white flowers and the red, and then that dark green in the background. I think it's just a beautiful, beautiful contrast. It just caught my eye immediately. Now, let me just make sure I've everything sorted here. Nice and steady. Here are my colours, and I have a new colour, which I'm going to try. Right, I have titanium white, Naples yellow, cadmium yellow pale. Let me just check. Let me just double check. No, just regular cadmium yellow. A little burnt sienna, some cadmium red, some lamp black, some burnt umber, some phaylo blue, and some phaylo green. It's a new one. I'm going to try it. I think it might make nice rich dark greens. Very rich, vibrant dark greens. That's my palette. It's a paper palette. My canvas is 16 by 12, and I primed this once, so it's not overly primed. It won't stay wet for too long. It'll kind of slightly dry in as we go, so we can get some nice texture on the canvas. Does that make sense? And the other most important thing we need when painting is a nice cup of coffee, okay? That's probably the most important piece of any tutorial. I also have some turpentine with a little linseed oil mixed in, just a tiny drop of linseed oil. That just helps oil the surface of the canvas as you're painting, okay? And some brushes, okay? These are my large green stubby brushes. If you would like them, just let me know. They're fantastic for trees and bushes and all sorts of things, okay? We have a large, medium and a small. Let me know if you'd like them anyway. Okay, let's crack on. We have a lot to do in this. A lot to do in this painting. Let me roll my sleeve up here. And I suppose we better do a quick sketch, a very, very loose initial sketch, just to know where we're going with this. I'm going to do the, let me see now first. Let's go up here and I'm going to just draw where the flower bed kind of comes down like that, okay? Just separate it a little bit. Then we have a little row of trees that comes along like that. It's not even a row of trees, I don't think. It's just like a grassy bank or something. Then we have a nice line of dark trees coming down like this. And everything disappears into this central point, which is lovely. I love that. We have another row of trees which comes up like that, okay? And then we have the hills. We have one kind of hill coming down like this. And, you know, I'm not going to try and copy these exactly, but I'm just going to do a quick kind of a reference to them. You know, you can take your time if you want to download the reference photograph and really take your time with this and, you know, really get all the details just right and what have you and get the drawing just right. I'm just going to do a quick reference. That's all I want to do. I'm thinking large stubby brush, or will I go with the small? I'll go with a large stubby brush. I'm going to dampen this very slightly and just soak off the excess, okay? I'm going to start with a very pale blue. So I'm going to take a little titanium white, and I may need another little touch of turpentine. What I do when I'm painting is I'll just dab the corner of the brush in the turpentine just to pick up a tiny, tiny amount, okay? Depending on how wet you want to paint. You might not want it too wet, so you don't need too much turpentine. A very light blue like that. And now I want to keep this warm, okay? So that's quite cold. I'm going to take a tiny hint of, I forgot one very important colour. A tiny hint of crimson. Now we have a very, very bright palette today, don't we? A very bright, colourful palette. Let me take a tiny hint of crimson. Okay. Now they are very, very rich colours in general. Oils, good quality oil paints are very, very rich. So you'll only need to take a tiny, tiny little amount of paint and that really covers the palette, so it really fills the colour. So let's take another bit of blue. So I took way, way far, far too much crimson there. So I'm going to put in another tiny bit of blue, slightly further down. And let me just take a look at this now. You see, that's more of a pink, isn't it? So let me just dry my brush very quickly. Take a little more blue. And the thing about phthalo blue is, phthalo blue has it's a very earthy kind of a blue. It's almost like a greeny blue. So you could probably use cobalt for this as well if you want. Cobalt would work well. I have cobalt, but I don't want to be putting too many different colours out of my palette. That confuses beginners, having too many colours. Even for me, this is a lot of colours. I would not normally use so many colours, but I just want to have a good choice and a good range. So let's just put this blue in up there, and it's already kind of not soaking in, but it's drying into the canvas very slightly because I did not over prime the canvas. And as it comes down, I want it very, very light because we have a hint of yellow up there. I don't know if I'll put the yellow in. I might put a hint of a warm colour in, but not a yellow. I'm taking more of the pink. As it comes down, I'm going to make it slightly more kind of mauvey and a very light, whitey kind of a pink. Does that make sense? And the reason for that is just to show these lovely little dots of clouds that we have, these lovely bits of clouds, and it's just to show off those little bits of clouds. Now let me just take another tiny bit of turpentine, and I'm going to just fill in the rest of this sky. I don't know now, I really hope these colours are kind of showing through on camera, because I have the exposure on that camcorder set very low. It's not very, very bright exposure, so I hope the colours are showing through okay. Now let me just take a look at this. Okay, I'm going to soften that across. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to darken the top. Okay, I'm going to take a little more phthalo blue and a little more crimson. And I want to just darken the top section, not with just blue, it's a very warm blue, okay? There's a hint of crimson in that. So let me just take a look at that now. That's a bit cold. I'll take another hint of crimson. You could probably try a little cadmium red also if you want, but crimson will give it that warm pinkish kind of a blue, whereas cadmium red will give it a very warm kind of a sunsetty kind of a blue. Does that make sense? The crimson is slightly cooler in terms of a pink. The red is much warmer. Look, I just want to darken it up on top anyway, just a little, and I'm going to soften that down into the colour underneath, okay? So I want a nice soft transition from dark to light, and that's still not dark enough, so I'm going to pick up more phthalo blue. And what I say to people is, it's much better to do a little bit at a time rather than just going right in there with a very dark colour, because it's much easier to darken the colour if you really need to, because if you go right on here with a very dark colour, it's going to be very difficult to lighten that colour up. You're going to be here forever adding white, and it just makes life difficult. So a little at a time, okay? You can always add more, but it's very difficult to take it off. Now, how's that? So that's a nice transition there now, isn't it? I quite like that. I think that's nice. I leave it. I won't overdo it. I'll put this brush down and I'm going to take another small brush. I'm going to go with a small flat, okay? It's a medium kind of a flat. Let me see now. Let me find one now that has a size on it. It's a number 7 flat, okay? I'm going to try that. And I'm going to mix up a colour now for those clouds, okay? Those little clouds. Let me just dampen this and dry it. And I'm going to go for a nice plum. So I'm going to take, let me see, a little crimson and a little phthalo blue. This is going to be more on the red side, okay? A lot more red than blue. Then I'm going to take a touch of Naples yellow. I'll go with Naples yellow because the white, you could use white, but white might make it a little chalky, whereas the Naples yellow will still keep it quite warm. Now let me have a look at this. The thing about this is I don't want to make this too light because it's going to mix in with that light whitey blue anyway, so it's going to start to lighten as I paint it, okay? So let's try. Let's just put a little bit of crosshair in there, look. So already you see, it's mixing in with the blue and it's kind of almost fading away. So I'm just going to put a hint of it just here and there. Look, I'm not being too fussy. These clouds are very sort of kind of hit and miss clouds. We'll go again in the middle. Let's put a kind of more of a prominent one in the middle here. And I'm not copying the clouds exactly, okay? It's just a quick kind of a reference, that's all. Come down here another little bit, okay? Let's soften it out. You can soften them with your fingers, look. Great fun with this. Soften them right in. Up here, soften some of those. You see? Isn't that lovely? The joys of oil painting, I tell you, they're fantastic. I'm going to start adding more warm colour on this side, so I'm going to go into some cadmium red this time. I'm going to add a little cadmium red to that. So that now will warm it slightly, you see? It's more earthy, more warm, more sunsetty kind of a red. Really brown kind of a hue. And there we are. Let's put that up there. I'm just going to... It's very... The thing with clouds, with painting clouds, is they're very random, okay? There's no set way for painting clouds. It's just a case of darting the paint around. Try not to spend too... I don't try to spend too long painting clouds, because if you spend so much time on clouds, you become fixated on the clouds and, you know, you could end up ruining them and spoiling them in the long run. So look, just very loose, just to suggest them kind of coming down from that top right hand corner. Put a couple of warmer one just around there, okay? Again, just, you see, it's just very, 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 very simple. I'm going to darken some of them slightly. I'm going to take some phaylo blue and I'm going to go with cadmium red this time. Now watch the difference. Phaylo blue with cadmium red. It's a real warm, earthy kind of, a browny kind of a plum, okay? It's a much darker colour. The crimson is a much more cooler kind of a plum. Let's pop a little bit in there. Let me take a little bit of dark. I might darken some of these just here and there on one or two of them. And I might even make them a little bit more blue up on the left. You can see they turn into a more purple, don't they? So let's make them slightly cooler. Just pop a little bit of the cool colour in just here and there, okay? And we can then, you see, soften some of these with the fan brush or a blender brush, whichever you like. Put a little bit of dark around them. Okay, now I'm going to just leave it at that for now. And I'm going to take my soft brush. So my blender brush here has kind of gone quite rough and hard because it wasn't cleaned properly. They only last so long really. But I might get away with it. Let me just... It's almost more like a bristle brush now. It's kind of, there's bits of paint stuck in it. But let me see if I can just soften some of these into the blue just a little, okay? I don't want to lose the brush strokes completely. I'm just very lightly putting the brush over some of them, okay? Just here and there. Round in circles. And look, that's not too bad. So now I'm going to put in some lighter colour. There are some lights here and there. I'm going to switch brushes. I'll take a clean, flat brush, okay? Dampen that very slightly. And I'm not going to go over pure yellow because pure yellow, if you look at the photograph, there's a very rich yellow down there. That does not work for me because they're two contrasting colours, yellow and blue. It'll go green if you mix it on wet paint. So I'm going to mix a slightly warmer colour, not yellow, but a warmer colour. I'll take a little cadmium yellow and I'll take a little cadmium red, okay? So it's not yellow, it's more of an orange. And then into that, some Naples yellow. That will make it nice and kind of, nice and chalky, opaque. Now a little more cadmium red. I'm going for a kind of a salmon colour. Okay, I think that colour works better next to the plum. Whereas putting a pure kind of a vibrant yellow next to that plum, I don't think it's going to work. So let me just pop a little of that down under here at the base. There's some kind of sunlight catching the clouds down here, isn't there? We'll take some more Naples yellow, maybe a hint of white, just because it's very pale off in the distance, okay? And put a little of that across one or two of the clouds here. Perhaps a dart of it, just a tiny touch of it up here, look. I don't want to go crazy with this now. I don't want to just start covering my clouds with yellow. So I'm being very, very careful not to overdo this. I just want it to be very, very subtle. Now, I'm going to even, with that, kind of soften it back in with my finger. But don't over soften this into the blue because you'll get a kind of a slightly green colour if you're not careful. So be careful not to overdo this. Just give your finger a wipe and let's soften them upwards and into the cloud. So you can see now it's a subtle colour, but it's there. Okay, I think we'll just leave it at that. In fact, what you could actually do is, with a small pointy brush, look, you could take a hint of white, and you could pop a hint of white in there just to suggest little bright clouds off in the distance, okay? And that will help kind of break up that distance as well. Now, we're done. Let's move on to these wonderful hills in the distance. For that colour, I'm going to start with a kind of a nice light pink, okay? Let's take white and let's mix it into this colour we already have, this lovely plum colour. plenty of turpentine in this now. So we have a very, very pale, pinky kind of a plum. Let's take a look at this now. Let me get this hair off of my brush. And let's just put that lovely pinky, light pink, on those distant hills, okay? I'm going to start with a lighter colour and then kind of work slightly darker into the hills, okay? Now, I don't know, do you want me to zoom in or leave it as it is? I really don't know. I think you might benefit from seeing me mixing the colours. So I'll leave it like this just for now. Now what I did was I picked up a little hint of the blue just as it was coming down into the distance, because that will give you depth, okay? The blue will give you lots of depth. I'll pick up another bit of blue. So you see. Now let me just clean my brush because I have some yellow still in my brush. I'm just giving it a quick clean. And I'll take some more white with crimson and some blue. So now we have nice warm colour. I'm going to darken some of these as they come up. So I'm going to mix a nice plum. Crimson with blue. A little hint of cadmium red. Let me just try that, okay? So as they come up, they're going to get slightly darker. And I'm softening them kind of in here and there. You know, I'm not covering the mountain entirely. Okay, so we go up here like this. We have a nice couple of, and kind of disappears back in there, and don't it. So now, let me switch brushes. I'm going to go to a slightly bigger flat brush just to get more coverage, that's all. You can continue on with a small one if you like. Crimson, bit of blue, a little hint of Naples yellow, okay? And when I say a little hint of Naples yellow, I mean just a hint. So let me take that, take a touch of white. So now I'm moving into a more kind of a grey kind of a pink. Take a bit more blue in that. Now that's still a little warm for me. I'm going to take a touch of black and then a hint of white, okay? I want this to be more sort of a grey, a warm grey, you know what I'm saying? Like a warm plummy grey. So a hint of black will just dull it down and dim it down very slightly. Okay, so there we go. Soften it with the very tip of your brush, nice and soft, there we are, look at that. And as it comes down, I'm going to start adding hints of green into this. So I'm going to take some more black, and then I'm going to take a hint of, I'm going to try the phaylo green, okay? And then a hint of blue. It's a very kind of a bluey kind of a green coming down. Just a hint of it just at the base, okay? Because I want to kind of soften those green trees into all this hill. Now, before I go any further, I want to just work on those hills, okay? And get them more looking like rocky kind of hills. So I'll take some white and a little of the black. And I'm going to take a hint of pink, so a hint of crimson, should I say. And I'm going to just suggest the impression of this kind of a grey, rocky, cliffy kind of effect, okay? Just coming down the same direction as the hills. Now you can, if you like, use a palette knife for this, if you really want to get that very solid, strong effect with the palette knife. But I'm not a big fan of using a palette knife for this type of thing, to be quite honest. There's a little hint of snow up there, so I'd pop a tiny amount of bit of snow here and there, and then kind of dragging it down, okay? You see? So I'm just grabbing little hints of white with my brush. And it's just suggesting a little hint of snow up there in the hills. Okay, then you can always use your finger or your blender brush and pull them down very, very slightly, look. There. So let me take a look at that now. What I'm going to do is, just to work on these, because I want to get these looking nice, I'm going to take a hint of phthalo blue with white. And I just want to give a little more depth in some of these hills. I'm just going to pop a little tiny amount of blue in there. Just to sort of push them off into the distance a little bit more. Now, I did say I don't want to spend too much time on these. And I don't want to let them overtake the painting. But I'm just going to add a little darker colour, a little shade, okay? A little shade here and there. I'm going to take some blue, some black and some crimson. Get more crimson, and I just want to add a little darkness to some of these, just to give them a little detail. Okay, that's all I want to do, a little detail. Now that's still a little bit light for me. I'll take a little bit more blue, a little bit more black. So you can see now it's just kind of coming to life a little bit more. I'm going to take a hint of burnt umber and with a touch of crimson. It's very, very warm colour. And I'm just going to sort of... It's just really, I suppose, suggesting that something is there, suggesting some shadows, that there's some shadows up there in the hills. You know, I'm not painting anything in particular. Okay? I just want to suggest it, that's all. Now, I want to go for a certain effect in this, a misty effect. So I'm going to, it kind of occurred to me as I was painting here, I thought, you know what? I'd like a little mist down at the bottom. So we don't have to copy the picture exactly as it is. So let's try a bit of mist. Let's go with some white and a little, let me see, a little pink, a little crimson. So white, a little crimson, and a touch blue. And how about we give this a little mist? Because I'm thinking a nice mist down here against that dark tree line. I think that would look really, really nice. So I'm going to try it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work, okay? What harm? At least we can say we tried. So that's all, that's what painting is about, isn't it? Learning and trying the experience. Just seeing what happens. And then I'm going to take some white, just some white on its own, and pop a little white in there. You know, we have a lovely mist, don't we? And then we can soften the hill slightly down into the mist. I think that will look quite nice when it's finished. Okay, I'm going to move on to these darker ones, and I'm going to use this same brush. Okay, I'm going to clean that, just dip it in your turpentine, give it a good rub on some tissue. I think this will be the brush for the job, I think. Let me, actually, I'm thinking, you see, I'm thinking all the time. Thinking what to do. Should I use that brush or should I use something slightly flatter? I think I'll go to the small, maybe the small flat one. That might work better. No, I'll try this one. My apologies. I'll try this flat brush. I want to get these nice dark trees in here. And I'm going to use black. Now, a nice dark rich green, but not overpowering. Cadmium yellow. So black with cadmium yellow. And to give them some distance, a little touch of phthalo blue. a tiny, tiny, tiny amount of phthalo blue. Now let me try these. Holding the brush upright, I'm just going to go like this, okay? And then fill that down. Just bring it down. Now, I wasn't sure about this brush because I need something kind of quite pointy and flat. I'll show you why. I could maybe do it on the side. You see, I could hold my flat brush on its side like this and just go up and down, creating the tops of the trees, you see. So you can just mess around and try different things. I'll take a little bit more phthalo blue as it comes down because it seems to get very kind of cool as it comes down into the tree, into the center point down here. And look, I'm even going to soften it sometimes here and there into the mist. Just rubbing it up and down into the mist, okay? Isn't that a nice effect? Actually, it's quite nice actually. I'm glad now that I've done the mist rather than just having a very dark line. So that little bit of mist does really help. Now I'm going to start warming them again ever so slightly. And it takes a very sharp rise going up then, doesn't it? Now these trees don't kind of go up into that hill. It's more of a rocky kind of a section. But I will just use this colour to fill in the trees down here, okay? So again, holding it sideways. It's a slightly warmer colour. I quite like that. I might soften them up a little bit more into the mist. And then in turn, I'm pulling the mist colour, that pale colour, down into the trees as well. So that's creating lights and darks in the trees, you see? Isn't that wonderful? What do we think about that? Now I'm going to take a little more phthalo blue and add a little white into it. Give us a light bluey green, and I'm going to just sort of give a hint of light on the light sides of some of these trees, okay? Just by pulling the edge of that brush down, you see? You don't have to try and paint leaves and individual little trees or anything like that. You can if you like, but that's a lot of work. You don't really need to go to all that trouble. I don't think so. So I'm going to create a nice grey up here with some black and a little white, and I'll take a hint of the pink. Just create a kind of a grey rocky effect up there. And okay, I'm going to darken it slightly with some burnt umber and a little black. I'll just take some black on its own. Soften some black in there. Just to give it some variety, that's all. Okay, that will do. Then I'm going to go back to my bigger brush and let's go and mix some of this nice dark colour again. Phthalo blue, some black and some cadmium yellow. Okay, a bit more cadmium yellow. In fact, let's try a touch of phthalo green as well. That's quite a nice, vibrant colour, isn't it? Now this may be a two-part tutorial because I'm taking my time. I want to do this really nice. Let's go right down here. And what I'm going to do then is, right at the bottom of these, I'm going to go very dark, okay? Really, really blacky. So, some lamp black, phthalo blue, and I take a tiny hint of cadmium yellow, just to give it that hint of green, okay? But it's really a very blacky green. And I'm going to soften these from the bottom kind of upwards. So I have this very rich dark colour here now, okay? Down at the base. Let's take a hint more of phthalo blue. And bring that colour right down here. I'm going to add some burnt umber to it, just to warm the green ever so slightly. So you see what I'm doing here now is, I know I have a nice dark colour here for the contrast with my light bright green flowers and grasses and stuff. So I have a nice dark background. That's what I'm trying to achieve. So let me get some more phthalo blue over here. Put some of that in. I'll take a little hint of burnt umber. And this is just paint now, by the way. I don't have much thinners in this at all. I'm just kind of going right into the paint and picking it up. You see? Add a little bit there. Little touch up there on the hills. So, how is this? How are we looking with this? Let me put a nice dark patch up here on the top of these hills. Coming down. And all I need to do with this now, I think, is just to add a little light, just to give it some light just here and there. The brush I'm going to use for that is, I'm going to go for a nice flat brush, okay? Relatively new flat brush. A dry brush, I'm going to take some cadmium yellow. And I'm going to take a hint of this lighter green here. So I'm going to go for now a nice kind of a bright green. Okay? A dry brush. And let me just see if this works. I'm going to kind of dab it just on the light sides of some of these greens here, okay? Just to give them a little highlight. And look, it's only a subtle highlight, that's all. Take a little bit more of the brighter colour. A little light around in there. And I'll go up here and add a little touch of light around in there as well. Okay, we'll go for a bit more. It's just to show a bit of interest, just give it a bit of warmth, that's all. Now, what I'm going to do next is cut across this with a lovely bright colour with the same flat brush, okay? I'm going to take some cadmium yellow, and I already have a little bit of green there, so it's a very light colour. Let me just try this now. I'm going to cut right across this with this nice bright colour, okay? Maybe a hint of Naples yellow. Because we have a lovely hill going right across that. I'm going to go up like this slightly out of the painting, you see? And I'm going to soften that darker colour back down into the light. I want to leave this light area just in the centre, okay? That's quite nice. Then it darkens again. Coming down, doesn't it? I'll take some burnt umber into this, because the green is getting slightly warmer as it comes forward over here. Let's mix a bit more of that. So some cadmium yellow, little burnt umber. And I just go and fill that in there. Isn't that lovely now? Look at that. And it disappears over here, doesn't it? So we have a nice little light area, and I'm even going to lighten it a little bit more to show the light of the sun coming through across the landscape. I'm going to take some cadmium yellow and a little titanium white, okay? I'm just going to pop that in, soften it out, clean the brush, and go back in again for some more fresh, bright colour. And that's a lovely light now coming across the landscape, isn't it? And soften it out. You see? And I think I might even want to go a little bit brighter. I'm going to try it. I'm going to go for a brighter colour. Some cadmium yellow and a hint of cadmium red. And then a nice big chunk of white, okay? So cadmium red, cadmium yellow, and plenty of white. Now, watch what happens. Let's try this. Look at that. Nice brightness coming right across that landscape. And it's really showing off the bright green. Isn't that lovely? Look at that. And going up the hill then, you see? So I'm going to leave it at that. I think that is more than enough. We're going to have these lovely dark greens now popping up and getting all these flowers in here. It's going to be absolutely beautiful. First, I'm going to just add a little bit of highlight to some of these again. I think they need just that tiny little bit of highlight. I'll go for this lighter green. Take a hint of phaylo blue. And I'm going to just pop it like this. Using the corner of my brush. So what I'm doing is I'm just suggesting little amounts and then the viewer's brain will fill in the blanks. Do you understand? So your brain will kind of fill it in as you're looking at it. So you know it's just highlights on trees. But I'm not painting individual leaves and all that kind of thing because I'd be here for days. So just a little bit like that. So now we know we can have the sun coming across, catching those lights, okay? You can soften them in a little bit with your fingers if you feel it's too strong, or you can leave them as they are. It's entirely up to yourself. A little bit of light up here. Suggest light hitting those trees up on top. And let me see, what time have we got? 39 minutes. That's very nice. I'm very happy with that. So what do we think about that? Isn't that lovely? I think that turned out quite nice. There's one thing I want to do, and that's with a dry brush. I'm going to soften some of these into the distant mist a little bit more. I think they're a little bit too harsh, and I just want it to be kind of nice and misty and soft in the centre. So I'm going to soften them in just a touch, look, by dabbing with a dry brush and bringing the mist kind of down a little bit further into the trees, okay? I just think it would be a much nicer effect, isn't that? I think it sits in and it gives it much more depth in the distant landscape, doesn't it? There we are now, look at that. I'm quite happy with that so far, very happy. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to do one last thing before I finish for part one, okay? I'm going to cover all of this with a nice rich dark green. And in part two then we'll take our time and work on flowers. So let me take a very big brush and I'm going to go for some black. Now lots of turpentine in this. Some black with cadmium yellow, lots of cadmium yellow. And some phaylo blue. I'll start with this. And we can just change it as we go if we need to, okay? I'm going to start with this lovely dark green. Let's even get some of this phaylo green, which is very cold phaylo green. And you could warm phaylo green as well. If you take some burnt umber, you see, that will then warm phaylo green. But it's nice to have the option of these nice dark greens on our palette. Even if you only just use a little bit, it's nice to have the choice, isn't it? Okay. So when I'm painting the flowers and all these leaves and stuff like that, I like to start with a really dark background. So that's why I'm getting this on, and in part 2 this will kind of be slightly dry. You see? I think that would be the best way forward. I like to do this type of under painting when I'm painting very dark greens like this and flowers. I like to have a very dark base to work on rather than just trying to paint directly onto a white canvas. It just makes it much easier to find your tones as you're going along. Now let me take a bit more cadmium yellow, and I'm going to kind of just sort of here and there soften in a little bit of cadmium yellow, look, just to mix it up a little bit. Just right up at the edge there, look, just to soften it out. And again, this is just underpainting. I'm giving some impression of little grasses and all that kind of thing with my rich cadmium yellow. I'll come right down. So I know then I have a nice base to work against. Does that make sense? I'm going to go right down now and get very dark down in the base here. Phaylo blue, phaylo green and black. And that's probably the darkest green you're going to find. Soften that up there. Let's go right in there again. Plenty of black. So I now know I have a nice rich base to start working with flowers and all that lovely stuff. Okay? So I'm going to leave it at that. Now I'm just going to soften it all together. We have this lovely graduation, dark to light. And my friends, I will leave it at that. This is part 1 finished. I hope you enjoyed it. Stick around for part 2 and we'll paint some beautiful, lovely rich leaves and lovely daisies and some nice red little poppy-ish type of flowers as well. Okay, I hope you enjoyed it. Do subscribe and I will see you all very, very shortly. God bless and happy painting.